The Southside was the city's first suburb. Initially, as Fort Worth grew, everything was largely contained in what we consider now the Central Business District. And almost as soon as the railroad arrived here in 1876, there were housing subdivisions being placed on the south side of the railroad, mostly along either side of South Main Street. And then what we really consider now the heart and soul of the Southside residential, in particular the Fairmount Southside National Register District, kind of came up between the period about 1890 to about 1920. But it was the city's original suburb, connected by a remarkable system of streetcars, probably one of the best transit systems anywhere in the South. It was very vibrant. Folks that either were living and working over here in the businesses that were already on the South Side, or more likely than not, catching the streetcar and moving into the Central Business District and going to work downtown when it was the full expanse of 17 blocks from what's now Lancaster all the way to the courthouse. So, as you look at the way it grew and developed, you had the big residential block and then the wonderful little small commercial areas that supported all of that. But I think what's interesting about probably any early history of a city is how densely packed it was, that you had residential and commercial and industrial kind of all operating side by side. And then in the years right after the war, Fort Worth was growing by leaps and bounds. The city nearly doubled its size by a series of annexations. So we began to see pretty immediately, certainly by 1946 and 47, this pretty rapid abandonment of the central city. That was happening in cities all across the country. We were just part of that national trend that we can get out of our old houses, let's move into something new. We could go home, get into our newly air-conditioned houses, turn on the television, and kind of shut that outside interaction out. So, by the time we hit, the late 60s, early 70s, we've got this block after block of abandoned, deteriorating housing because nobody's paying that much attention to what's happening in the immediate core. The demographics shift, the economic opportunity kind of slips through the fingers. Banks don't loan in the neighborhoods anymore. So you go into what was pretty much a dormant period. In a lot of ways, we lost the close sense of community. And what was, I think, so much fun in watching the South Side come back to life in the 80s and through the early 90s was reestablishing what made neighborhoods work in the first place.